Back in Matthew's Gospel now for a stretch, having spent a few days in the Minor Prophets, and I suspect some of you might be breathing a bit of a sigh of relief. This feels a lot easier to engage with, more straightforward. But let's dive back in. We left Matthew's Gospel with Jesus giving the Sermon on the Mount, the summary, if you like, of his teaching about life in his kingdom and the life style of those who are walking in his ways. And as he descends from the mountain, then in a very real sense, we see this king in action, and the response that's demanded of those who would follow him. So let's read this chapter, or the start of this chapter, and see what we can learn. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Notice where the emphasis in the question lies: if you're willing. This man has confidence Jesus can do it. He's just not sure that Jesus wants to do it. What's the response? Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. Please don't ever think that the king is unwilling to respond to our need when we ask. The constant emphasis of the New Testament is that those who ask receive, those who knock, the doors open, those who seek find. He doesn't turn anyone away who comes to him. We see this in this very simple story of this man with leprosy. And then Jesus said to this man, see that you don't tell anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them. So he's got to go and authenticate his healing now, and Jesus doesn't want it widely publicised at this stage because he needs the freedom to move, and if this is too widely publicised, people will be getting too excited about what's going on, and he needs to keep that under wraps for a little bit longer yet. So that's the first incident. Is Jesus willing? Yes, he is. Second incident: when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home paralysed, suffering terribly." Jesus said to him, "Shall I come and heal him?" The centurion replied, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed, and said to those following him, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith." So if the first story was about the willingness of Jesus, the second story is about the faith of the man coming to him. Here is a man who is utterly confident that Jesus has authority to speak the word and to heal his servant. He knows it from his own measure of authority that he has power because of his role, but he sees Jesus' greater power and trusts him implicitly just to say the word and know that his servant will be healed. And Jesus is amazed. This is a standout moment. This is something unusual, and it's coming from a Roman centurion, not from one of the Jewish people. Excuse me. "I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven." There's the emphasis again on the kingdom, Jesus' kingdom. "But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness, where they'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Jesus captures this moment as this centurion, an outsider, a Gentile, comes with great faith. And Jesus says, tragically, while many from outside of the kingdom by nature, the Jewish people, will flock in and receive life, the subjects of the kingdom, many of them will be thrown out because they refuse to receive the Saviour. Then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, let it be done just as you believed it would," and his servant was healed at that moment. So is Jesus willing? Yes. Have we got the faith to trust him? That is the deciding factor as to whether we're in the kingdom or not, whether we trust or not our religion, not our ethnic background, not our upbringing, but whether we trust in Jesus. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand and the fever left her, and she got up and began to wait on him. Another instance where instantly Jesus has control over sickness, and he's the one who drives out the fever. And we go on to read, "When evening came, many who were demon-possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all who were ill." This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. "He took up our infirmities and bore our diseases. It's an interesting quote, isn't it? Because it seems to be suggesting that he's taking those diseases on himself. He bore our diseases. He's lifting them from the people who have experienced them. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. So as part of his kingdom work, he's been busy ministering to these people, but he needs to withdraw now. And as he does that, a teacher of the law came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." That sounds great, doesn't it? That's a commitment to a rabbi, to a teacher. I recognise your authority and the word that you've got to teach. I want to learn from that, and I'll come with you. Jesus replies, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Another disciple said to him, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." These sound quite harsh responses, but Jesus is calling for a accounting of the cost in following him. That in this world there is no home. It is transitory. Jesus was wandering. He stayed in other people's homes, often slept out in the open. He had no permanent rest. He was heading to his Father's home, as we learn from John's Gospel ultimately. And even when it comes to death and our connection with family, there is a calling to leave behind those things as we prioritise Jesus. And that's challenging and hard as we think about what's most important in our lives. So here is this summary of teaching regarding Jesus and the kingdom. Is he willing? Yes. Do we have the faith? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves. Do we trust him to deliver on what he says he will do? Can we capture afresh the nature of this king and his kingdom as he's healing and driving out the darkness, but also recognise the cost of following him, of being part of his kingdom in this world, that will be difficult and challenging and will bring discomfort and pain. So just some thoughts to get us thinking about being in the kingdom of Jesus today. We're going to listen to a song now that thinks about that everlasting kindness of Jesus.